Good evening and welcome to the ReImagine Jobs Spotlight on Sustainable Transportation. My name is Lucinda Beatty and I'm your moderator for tonight. My interest in this subject comes from 20 years of working for the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership on alternative transportation projects that encouraged and promoted ways for people to travel around and through downtown without driving. I retired in late March of 2020 as the Vice President of Transportation. And since then, I've been focused on trying to provide additional passenger rail service to this region. I'm the board vice president for a group called Western Pennsylvanians for Passenger Rail. We're delighted tonight to be joined by our esteemed panelists who are working on a variety of sustainable transportation initiatives in our region. Tonight's program is part of the ReImagine Jobs Showcase, a website launched in September of 2020. If you want more information about it, go to www.reimaginejobs.org to find out about the showcase and what job opportunities and exhibitors are there. The goal of reimaginejobs.org is to highlight sustainable economic development initiatives and job opportunities in southwestern Pennsylvania. The website features local businesses and organizations in 9 sectors of sustainable economic development. Tonight's program on sustainable transportation is the first in a series that we're launching to look deeper into each of the 9 sectors. Please take a look at the website and explore what's available there for you in terms of who is a business exhibiting and what opportunities are there. To give you some context for tonight's program, sustainable transportation focuses on reducing carbon emissions from transportation sources and reworking our streets and roadways to allow for future mobility choices. Infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure, and public transportation, including buses, light rail, and passenger rail, are all examples of sustainable transportation. We're going to open tonight's program with a framing conversation from Pittsburghers for Public Transit. PPT is a grassroots organization of transit riders, workers, and residents whose mission is to keep the public in public transit and to work in communities to advocate for equitable, affordable, and sustainable transportation systems. They will help frame our conversation around equity and the need for community voices in these economic development initiatives. After PPT, we will hear presentations from Pitt, Ohio Trucking, the City of Pittsburgh, and the Port Authority and Duquesne Light. These presentations will highlight current initiatives that they are employing people in our community. We will then have an opportunity for a general Q&A session. Please put your questions at that time for all of the panelists into the chat. If you have more specific questions for individual panelists, we will have breakout rooms after the Q&A focused on the various areas of sustainable transportation. There will be a breakout room on buses and public transit, rail, electric cars and trucks, and bicycles and pedestrian infrastructure. You'll be able to choose the breakout room that most interests you. And in that breakout session, you'll be able to network and have more specific, informal conversations about that topic. And thanks again for joining us tonight. Now, I'm going to turn to Josh Malloy to kick it off. Josh works for Pittsburghers for Public Transit as a community organizer. So, Josh, please welcome to the Job Showcase.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lucinda. Looks like you got out of work just in time for the world to go to crap. So congratulations for that. My name is Joshua Malloy. I'm the community organizer for Pittsburghers for Public Transit. We are an organization that focuses on highlighting the voice of transit riders and transit operators, making sure that they have transit operators are paid a good living wage, and making sure that transit riders have access to equitable, affordable, and sustainable public transit. Right now, 2020 has been a tough year for public transit in Pittsburgh, and it's been the toughest on people who are our frontline workers, especially when the pandemic first happened, and Port Authority really was restricting the number of people who can get on buses, the number of people who can, the number of buses that were in service, and all of that good stuff. Everyone hopefully remembers. The people who were hurt worse were the people who are already tend to be worse off in our communities anyway, right? So we did several surveys, and we talked to a bunch of bus riders, and we figured, and we were like, what is it that you need? What is it that you want from our public transit provider right now in 2020? And what they mentioned was more frequency in public transit on routes that were specific to like their area. So we saw that ridership in general went way down, but a lot of like commuters who worked 9-to-5 jobs Monday through Friday were no longer on buses, but the number of frontline workers on public transportation generally stayed pretty level. So they say, well, we need buses in our community, more buses, more ways to get to work. We agree that, we should limit the amount of people on buses to 15 and all that good stuff. Another reason why the conversation around equity is important right now is because our public transit is in Pennsylvania is heading toward a funding cliff. If people don't know, Act 89 is going to expire in the next couple of years, and Act 89 is how we fund our public transportation. And that's going to have an effect on a lot of people, a lot of marginalized people who don't just commute to work, whose public transportation is vital to their life. They don't have another option other than to take the bus or to ride a bike or to walk. So we need to make sure that whenever we talk about funding going forward, that those voices are included, and not just included, but solutions that come out of that community are taken seriously for funding public transit and everything else. Because at PPT, we believe that solutions for problems specific to communities should come from those communities. So, having an outsider come in and tell you how to fix your public transit or what you need in the community isn't necessarily going to work for that community, because those communities have been living with those problems and have been experiencing those problems. We are going to be planning. PPT is going to be planning a statewide organizing effort to help come up for solutions to our public transit funding crisis. And we're going to use experiences, stuff we've learned from the past, to do that. So a couple of years ago, PPT worked on a campaign to extend the East Busway out into the Mon Valley and the eastern suburbs. And what we did is we hired a bunch of community members to conduct a very extensive survey into what they would like to, what they would want that East Busway extension to look like. It was an online survey. It took about 20 minutes to complete, and including maps and stuff like that. But we wanted to take that same program and take it statewide to help come up with solutions for our funding crisis. We believe that is the best way to equitably include people in the conversations around public transit and around sustainability in public transit and otherwise. But yeah, I hope I didn't take up too much time, but I could keep going if you want.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Josh. We really appreciate hearing all of that background information, and you raise issues that definitely have to be focused on as we work on sustainable economic initiatives. Now we're going to start our presentations focused on specific initiatives happening in our region. Our first presenter is Justine Russo of Pitt, Ohio Trucking. As the Director of Sustainability and Business Intelligence for Pitt, Ohio, Justine leads Pitt, Ohio's award-winning sustainability programs. They include heading the cross-functional steering committee, implementing the company's carbon calculator, and reporting on actionable sustainability metrics. As part of her role at Pitt, Ohio, Justine also develops data-driven solutions, delivering analyses and tools that leverage information from throughout the Pitt, Ohio organization with a concentration on customer, marketing, and sales analytics. In 2017, she joined the board of directors of Sustainable Pittsburgh. And last but not least, Justine graduated from the University of Pittsburgh with an MBA and a BS in civil engineering. Welcome, Justine.
Hello, and thank you so much for the opportunity to talk tonight on this subject. It's really important, and I'm glad people are taking the time to talk about it. As Lucinda mentioned, Pitt, Ohio is a freight transportation provider for both full truckload and less than truckload service, as well as supply chain solutions. Back in 2011, our owner and president, Chuck Hamill, wanted us to develop a core competency, in sustainability, in addition to our competencies in service, solutions, and safety. And why? Why is that? Most people, when they see a tractor trailer going down the road, they don't think, boy, sustainability, right? It takes a lot of resources for Pitt, Ohio to deliver almost 10,000 tons of freight every day. So to find a more sustainable way of doing that is good for our business, it's good for our employees, and it's good for our communities. And over the past 10 years, Pitt, Ohio has learned that sustainability is a framework for us to develop solutions for our customers, invest in our fleet and our facilities, provide a healthy and safe work environment, and give back to the communities in which we operate. So I wanted to give you some highlights over some of the really exciting things we've done over the past 10 years. The first thing we did is we looked at our data, and, we're a trucking company. We saw, the biggest source of our emissions are obviously our trucks, or maybe not so obviously. So a key metric, and I talk a lot about metrics, a key metric for us is miles per gallon. You might hear me call it MPG. If I accidentally use the acronym, it's miles per gallon. A small 1% improvement in miles per gallon can lead to us saving 6 million gallons of diesel fuel per year. So we really started out by looking at the metrics for each driver from our onboard computers and how the driver can operate that truck efficiently. And then we also looked at our investment in our fleet and looking at new trucks with automatic transmissions, trailer skirts, and alternative fuels, specifically compressed natural gas or CNG trucks. Outside of the trucks, we also looked at how we could have modern, safe, and state-of-the-art buildings with some earning LEED certification. And these buildings are not only energy efficient, but they really help, if you've ever been to a trucking terminal, sometimes they are not the most modern facilities or nice facilities. And these facilities really help our employees with retention and recruitment. And the employees are a critical part of our sustainability program, and it's also a critical part of our overall service. We know that happy and engaged employees provide great customer service. So one other part of our sustainability are our employee wellness programs, one of which we worked with Pitt, and we discovered that financial insecurity can lead to stress and distracted driving. So we've implemented a savings account program to help people develop savings skills. And if you've heard Pitt, Ohio talk about sustainability before, we've been really excited about, we have 3 solar and wind renewable energy installations, each of which is attached to a microgrid to store the energy so we can use it in our facility. We've developed a carbon calculator that can actually track estimated emissions for our customer shipments. These are scope 3 emissions for our customers, so we can help them be more sustainable. And in the long term, we're really looking at how we can implement electric trucks. There really is no heavy duty electric truck on the market today. So we are working with the manufacturers as well as researching how to do charging of a large vehicle at our facilities. And we're really excited about the future of the electric truck market. I did want to take a few minutes, if I have time, to talk a little bit about what I think are the impacts on the job market. And the fact of the matter is freight transportation isn't going away. If the pandemic showed us anything, shipments went up, they're smaller and they're more frequent with more shipments going to people's houses. Drivers are still in demand. It's still, we are always looking for qualified, safe drivers out there. New equipment is going to be critical as companies look to electrify their fleets and their warehouses. And I think that's an opportunities for drivers, especially a driver who might not think about driving a tractor trailer. I think these trucks will be smaller and there will be more with automatic transmissions. But also mechanics need to have new skill sets to work on these types of vehicles. I think there's a real opportunity outside of the truck too. I mean, being data driven, in my intro, it talks a lot about how I want to, I use a lot of data in my work. And I think it's really important because we want to see the proven results from these programs. And then finally, I think the sustainable supply chain is just going to continue to grow. I think there'll be more products and more investments in this area. And I think one example of that is the auto industry's investment in electrification. But you're going to see that across different manufacturing and wholesale groups. You're going to see all sorts of industries finding new sustainable ways of doing business and looking at what products they can create to serve this new market. And that's all I had. So I'll throw it back to Lucinda.
Well, thank you very much, Justine.
Yes.
So much of that was really new information for me, and it's great to hear how much Pitt, Ohio is doing. Now we're going to have a presentation from Grant Irvin, who works for the city of Pittsburgh. Grant is the city's Chief Resilience Officer. He drives strategy, creation, and execution of citywide sustainability and resilience initiatives. He leads environmental, social, and governance reporting activities and fosters cross-sector and intra-departmental partnerships. Over the past 6 years, he has helped set ambitious carbon reduction strategies, built citywide and district scale resilience strategies, and crafted innovative decision support products while leading a variety of social, environmental, and economic development activities. Wow. Anyway, thanks and welcome, Grant.
Great. Thanks, Lucinda, and it's great to
Nice
see you.
to see you.
It's been
Nice
a
to
while. Thanks, everybody, and it's great to be here with everyone this evening. Just a quick plug for Justine. If you get a chance to ask her for a tour of the facilities that Pitt, Ohio operates, it's well worth it. And having worked in warehouses in the early part of my career, I have to say that the facilities you guys have out in Cheswick is the cleanest warehouse that I've ever been in large part because you've electrified it. And I think that's just a testament to kind of the great work that you guys do. What I was asked to share a little bit with everyone today is about the work that we've been doing on transportation electrification and electric vehicles specifically. So what I wanted to talk about is a little bit of the genesis of that, kind of, how we shaped that program and kind of where we're at and where we're going in the future. The work that we've done in vehicle electrification really started with the development of the city's climate action plan, which started one of the groups that we pulled together was a transportation group to look at how you can reduce emissions through city services. And what the group came up with is that there's effectively kind of two strategies that you can take, a mode shift strategy and a fuel shift strategy. Mode shift is really thinking in terms about getting folks out of vehicles. And you've heard a little bit about that mentioned already tonight. So transit, walking, biking, the city steps are a key piece of kind of our mode shift infrastructure. And so how you can focus in on investments there to get people out of vehicles and effectively use kind of other sources of mobility to move about town. The other way is fuel shift, and that's where I'm going to be focusing a lot of my attention tonight on. And that work for us was catalyzed by that climate action strategy. But one of the first important steps that we took was developing a fleet baseline, which doesn't sound really, incredibly exciting, but it was work that was helped supported for us by the Heinz endowments to understand what was in the city's fleet in terms of the type of equipment and vehicles that we're using and the amount of emissions that were being created from those vehicles. So, everything from, your NOx and SOx, but also into your other greenhouse gas emissions that figure into our overall greenhouse gas emissions footprint. And with that information in hand, it gave us a great deal of insight in terms of the variety of decisions that we could take in terms of the fleet and the ability to reduce pollution and improve operations concurrently. And one of the first simple things was to shrink the size of the fleet. We had a lot of vehicles that were in operations, but not really utilized effectively or not really needed. So shrinking the fleet was kind of the number one movement that we were able to take. The second was the opportunity was then to affect piloting and what we called piloting and procurement. So understanding kind of the different aspects of technology that were available, market-ready available technology that could be plug and play into our different procurement decisions. So we had, at the time, a fleet size of over 1,000 vehicles. And understanding that the city and an operation the size of the city is buying new vehicles and replacing vehicles every year. The third strategy was when we can replace those vehicles, actually to replace vehicles quicker from the standpoint of every time that you are updating that technology, you're improving the emissions output from those vehicles. So shrink the size of the fleet, start to change your procurement strategies, and then ultimately find ways in which to get vehicles quicker into the fleet were the strategies that we started to take shape. And since the passage of the city's climate action plan in 2018, by the end of this year, we'll already be up to about 60 plus electric vehicles and hybrids in our fleet. And a lot of that penetration in the fleet has been available because of market-ready technologies. So if you think about the Chevy, the Chevy Bolt or the Ford Focus, those have been the ones that we've been able to quickly introduce into our fleet successfully in terms of permit vehicles. Like our Departments of Permits uses the Chevy Bolt. Our Department of Mobility and Infrastructure uses the Ford Focus, or some folks like to call it the Ford Foci. And now those are kind of normal parts of operations. The other thing that we've been able to do is to also change the fuel source. So understanding that emissions reduction was a key component of our overall strategy, what we've been able to do is to start to change our sources of power, both in terms of on-site solar to power some of those vehicles, but also just last year we were able to reach an agreement to obtain 100% renewable electricity for all of our city operations. So all the vehicles that we have operating on an electric drivetrain right now are also powered by renewable energy. The other things now that we're starting to kind of push the frontier on a bit are tools to actualize fuel sources like biodiesel and biogas, as well as some research right now into the green hydrogen industry that can help fulfill some of those challenges that we're looking at with heavy duty vehicles, where battery weight doesn't quite make a market-ready available technology quite yet. So we're starting to look at some alternative sources there. A couple other points I just wanted to kind of share with everyone on kind of the next steps for us and our work, but also some of the economic development opportunities. Is one of the things that we're looking at right now, or not looking at, but actually close to finalizing the completion on, is an EV master plan for city facilities and public assets. So trying to find ways in which that we can continue to support vehicle electrification for small mobility devices, fleet vehicles, but also public charging. So that's something that in the next couple of months you'll see out in the public realm for some comment and input on. The second is integrating those aspects of land use and transportation together. So already, the mention of transit has been a key component. So one of the key projects on the docket right now, as many folks know, is the Bus Rapid Transit Program. And I know somebody from the Port Authority is going to be addressing this later, but electrifying those vehicles and supporting the electric infrastructure along those routes is a key component of work that we're working on with local utilities and the Port Authority. And then finally, what I would add to in terms of the economic development component, we've recently released a piece of work that we call the Marshall Plan for Middle America, which is effectively a regional investment strategy to help advance the clean energy transition in the Ohio Valley and Upper Appalachia. And one of the key things to understand here, particularly in this sector, the electrification of vehicles, is the supply chain opportunities. So when you look at these procurement opportunities for both public, private, and individuals, there are components that are being supported by a number of Pittsburgh and regional-based manufacturers. So steel from United States Steel is one of the major components of the chassis in electric vehicles. PPG is providing the coatings for both vehicles and batteries. Companies like Covestro are providing polymers for the battery technology, and you have companies like Eaton that are supporting kind of grid infrastructure as well as charging technology. So this is kind of a huge opportunity, I think, is in thinking about the just transition, is thinking about those opportunities in a circular fashion, and we're really happy to help support that. So with that, I'll turn it over back to Lucinda, but thanks for giving me the opportunity to share this story with you.
Thank you very much, Grant. I thought it was extremely interesting, and it's great to see the city moving ahead in this direction. Our next presentation is from Josh Banyas and Sarah Alexa. Josh is the manager of capital programs and systems at the Port Authority of Allegheny County. He's an electrical engineer with a background in power distribution design. His group at the Port Authority are responsible for management of state and federally funded capital projects. He oversees designs that include HVAC improvements, electrical distribution, and communication upgrades. He's currently overseeing the design of the electrical infrastructure for the battery electric bus upgrades for the Port Authority. Sarah Alexa is the manager of transportation electrification at Duquesne Light Company. At Duquesne Light, Sarah works to build and implement the company's electric vehicle and charging infrastructure strategy. She has 15 years of experience working on advanced transportation for the federal government and the automotive industry. So welcome, Josh and Sarah.
Thanks, Lucinda. Looks like my screen is sharing. Josh, you off mute over there?
Yeah, and how convenient that Sarah's sharing and is not on camera. But
I am on camera. I'm on camera.
But I wanted to say good evening to everybody. Again, thank you, Lucinda, for the introduction. Basically, just wanted to go through. We were asked to discuss the authority's electric bus program and our partnership with Duquesne Light and everything that Duquesne Light's also working on with electrification. So just to give everybody a background, I'm sure everybody recalls that Port Authority is Allegheny County's public transportation system, and we have roughly 700 buses, 80 LRV vehicles, 2 inclines, 2,600 employees. Pre-COVID, we did support over 200,000 riders per day. We have over 20 miles of authority-owned busway. And our main revenue source is really fare and the advertising. And then we're typically funded by county, state, and federal sources and any grant approvals that we get.
And then here on the Duquesne Light side, you guys on the phone tonight might be one of our almost 600,000 customers in the Pittsburgh region. We're your electric utility. We have 1,600 employees. That's important to note as this is a jobs discussion. And as we think about bringing more jobs to our local economy, what better way than to transition to electricity as a fuel as opposed to foreign fuels? So we have I do want to also mention, I'll do a little plug. We have 71 job postings on our website right now, including one paid internship for clean energy and many other paid internships too. So check those out if that's something that you guys are interested in. And I'll also note that we're the first Pennsylvania utility to receive approval from our regulators to do electric vehicle related programming and activity. And the project that we're talking about today with the Port Authority is one of our biggest showcase projects from that effort.
And obviously going into this, our main objective was we wanted to look at, how can we reduce some of those transit fleet operating costs and our emissions, making the buses a little bit more reliable, less reliant on, fossil fuels, and looking towards, ensuring some of those reliable transit service to our riders, and wanting to make sure that we had a good infrastructure in place. Everything was cost effective, which is always a delicate balance, trying to get those things to run side by side, because sometimes you might have to invest a little bit more money up front before you actually get to see the benefit of that, and utilizing that data collection to make smart choices with that. And obviously, looking wherever we can to obtain, project financing. And one of that was our work with Duquesne Light. So that actually helped us out a lot.
Did it? I don't think you thank me enough, Josh. But
yeah, it doesn't happen all the time.
So if you're lucky enough to take a ride on one of the electric buses that is now in service in the city of Pittsburgh or in the Pittsburgh region, you'll see this poster. And this was a really key message that we wanted to share with folks that were riding these buses. And that is that electric buses reflect that a transition to electric mobility really benefits everyone. There's no fine particulate matter coming out of the tailpipes, much quieter rides due to the electric motor, and cutting down on noise pollution in our communities. And most important, as Josh mentioned at his bottom line, is that over the lifetime of these vehicles, of the bus's lifetime, I should say, the buses really save money due to reduced fuel costs. Electricity is a cheaper fuel than other options. So Josh, you want to talk a little bit more about what the project actually looked like?
Yeah, we basically, as anything when it comes to, trying to put a government project together, it does take some time to get things rolling. And I actually think that overall we were able to do a lot of this work within a year, and that's actually pretty fast for how a lot of things can play out in our certain, circumstances. So we were able to work on an agreement and get an agreement together with Duquesne Light on pilot for us to receive two 40-foot battery electric buses. And those were awarded, the buses were awarded to us through a low, no emissions grant that we had put in for on a federal level. And whenever we were awarded that, we had to start looking at the charging infrastructure and how we wanted to test out these buses and what we would look to make the best showing in Pittsburgh of how these buses would operate. And so currently we, in April, we were actually able to launch the first two electric buses, slightly overshadowed by the entire, COVID epidemic here, but we do have them out on the street running. Currently, they're on our 88 route that goes basically through East Liberty, downtown area, and also into Shady Side. We wanted to look at how well it would handle just, we'll say, some normal topology in Pittsburgh, and not hitting a lot of the higher hills and some of those items there, just to see how well these buses would react to our city, basically.
All right, so just to kind of highlight the fact that the project has really created a great community outreach opportunity. And last month, we ran a campaign about the electric buses where we placed poster advertisements at bus shelters and placed sponsored posts on social media. What was really great about this is that we got in total over 800,000 impressions. And Josh, I would say that's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, that worked out pretty well.
So let's talk about jobs and workforce implications of electric mobility.
So from the Port Authority's end, that's actually a very interesting conversation, because since we've just basically dipped our toes in the water with these electric buses, we're constantly learning how things are going to change and how we're going to have to react to having this different type of transportation, different buses, and what we need to do to service those buses. So our current maintenance personnel have been going through some additional training and classes by the vendors, just to see how these buses differ from our current diesel buses, low emission clean diesel buses that we have. So the jobs are basically forthcoming. It'll be something that we'll have to look into, that as we hope to improve and increase the amount of electric buses that we do have. We'll see how that affects how we have to adjust our, especially our maintenance folks, with how they're able to service the buses. And then there's also side channels of the workforce where we have who actually charges the bus and how do they move them around in the garage and where do they park them and how does that affect everybody's daily work shift. So those items are actually still forthcoming because we're still not sure how we're going to integrate them in our normal procedures, but we know that we really do want to pursue it. So as we adjust, as these buses come in and as we progress into the BRT program that was mentioned earlier, that BRT program has us receiving many more electric buses, some of those, the 60-foot articulating buses, and we will look to integrate those into our service garages and how we want to do charging with those. So the job implications of that are more on the horizon as we start to build that fleet.
And we should give a shout out to Schulteis Electric, who was our electrical contractor for this job, who did a great job there. And we also worked with WRA, local company, a local team, to do the engineering drawings for the building of this infrastructure, as well as a whole team from Duquesne Light who worked on things on our end. I wanted to highlight here the Advanced Energy Economy put out a report. The links at the bottom of the screen, if you just Google AEE, Electric Transportation Supply Chain in Pennsylvania. And a couple facts that came out from this. This was just out last summer. They found that as of 2019, the electric mobility industry in Pittsburgh had already supported 4,400 jobs across 150 some companies. And accounted for $430 million in gross state product. So that's pretty awesome. 1,800 of the jobs are in repair and maintenance, and manufacturing accounting for another 1,000 jobs. And speaking of manufacturing, I'll just hit home what Grant was talking about earlier. As we think about local players that are participating in the manufacturing supply chain. Pittsburgh Technology Council and Duquesne Light teamed up, I think it was last year, for a series where we did a video series and a publication series highlighting stories about how our local players, 2-6 up in Butler County, PPG, Covestro, Eaton, Lanxess, US Steel, all really awesome employers doing great stuff that are really innovating and contributing to the transition to electric vehicles right here in the Pittsburgh region. I'm sure there's a lot more that should be on this list that we missed. So that's really exciting. And I think that is about it from us.
Great, we're just bringing Lucinda back in.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Josh and Sarah. We're now going to transition to a relatively brief Q&A session. If you have a broad question that would apply to a range of the presenters, please put it in the chat. If you have a more specific question for an individual panelist, you might save that for the breakout rooms. And there will be time in the breakout rooms to explore specific issues more fully. To sort of kick off the chat Q&A right now, I'd like to ask the panelists, how can we ensure that the kinds of projects you all are talking about can be done in a way that prioritizes community voices and values equity and accessibility, as Josh outlined? Anybody want to take a chance at it?
I'll take a crack. One of the key things I think that I've recognized over the time that we've been doing this work is the we get quickly involved into kind of the nerdy choices about which electric vehicle and, how does charging work and things like that, which I think are oftentimes really exciting. But one of the things that is simple and maybe a bit obscure is the role of public procurement. And so a lot of the choices that we make are buying decisions, which require budget. When you think about kind of the role, particularly from like public agency standpoint, understanding where resources are being allocated and for what is a really critical component. So thinking in terms of the impacts on supply chains, but also in terms of what we're buying, provides a really good opportunity. And budget seasons are good opportunities to make public input and those kind of wishes known. The second piece I would say, and like I mentioned, the EV strategy that we're working on developing, we can't be everywhere in terms of the deployment of electric assets, but trying to find ways to provide electrification choices that solve or help address the variety of mobility needs is a place where we're always looking for input on and good ideas, frankly, because it's a frontier. There's not many places that have this quite figured out yet. And so understanding how we can support the needs of the community and electrification are really important. The other thing I'd make is the city recently, or not recently, but a few months back, kicked off our first comprehensive planning process called Forge PGH. And so that's a huge opportunity, I think, to make insights in terms of the land use and transportation connection, whether that's for electric vehicle technologies or other, as I mentioned in my presentation, the mode shift conversation. That's important input that we need from the public.
Hey, Lucinda, I'd also like to add to that. That was a really good response, Grant. I think that one of the biggest things here is looking at members of the community who speak up and share their desires with their local leadership, urging them to be leaders. Going forward, Duquesne Light will have more funding, more opportunities to contribute, hopefully, here's hoping, project costs towards other electric vehicle charging infrastructure, those types of projects. And we want to be able to say that we're not just doing this in downtown Pittsburgh, right? Or just in certain neighborhoods. And it really takes partners on the community side to sort of step up, raise their hand and say, yes, we want this here. We want EV charging here. We want electric buses coming through our community. So those are the types of things that we're watching for and that we're embracing when we see those interests from community members. So anyone who's interested should send me a message.
Okay, Josh, you just got told you need to send a message to Sarah.
I would just add one other thing, and I think Grant and Sarah both hit on really good things. I'm going to put my Sustainable Pittsburgh hat on for a second. And I said, I've been doing this specifically sustainability now for 10 years. And I remember the environmental aspect of it at the beginning. It was really like, people didn't understand it. They thought you were tree huggers. They thought it was just a cost. And I really see social equity right now at that beginning stage. And as more people do it and more people share what they've learned and share their best practices, it's going to make all boats rise and we're going to get better at it. So I'm really hoping the more we talk about it, more we share about it, we can really make a difference in it.
Well, thank you, Justine. Does, before our final question, I wanted to let you know that this is going to be your opportunity while we're discussing the final question, which of the breakout rooms you're interested in going into. We're going to have 4 breakout rooms. each focused on a different aspect of sustainable transportation. And what I'm going to do is let Mark, if you don't know how to put the number of the room you're interested in your name, then I am going to let Mark work with you on that or explain how to do it afterwards. But if you know
Lucinda,
how to use, yes, Mark?
I just want to pause you there. We've found a feature in Zoom that will let people choose their own breakout group. And so you won't need to do any weird hacks, I think. But if you can't get into the breakout room once it's time to choose, look for the place to choose your room. But if you can't, then I'll help you get into the room. So there's no need to change your name or anything like that. Thank you.
Okay, so the breakout rooms are going to be as follows. Number one, room one is buses and public transit, and that will have Josh Banyas, Josh Malloy, and Sarah Alexa. Breakout room number two is going to be electric vehicles, and that would be cars and trucks. And Grant Irvin and Justine Russo will be there as your resident experts in the area, field. Breakout room number three is passenger rail, and I'm going to be there to talk about passenger rail. Breakout room number four is bicycles and pedestrian infrastructure. And while we haven't had a speaker per se on that today, we do have two people who will be the resident experts in that particular breakout room who have a lot of knowledge in the area. One is Karina Ricks, the current director of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure for the city of Pittsburgh. And as I think you probably understood from some of what Grant said, DOMI does all the transportation planning and implementation and design for the city now. It's been, having a department like that locally has been a wonderful thing for the city. And then the other resident expert in that particular breakout room is Eric Boyer, who is the advocacy director for Bike Pittsburgh. And Bike Pittsburgh is a long time grassroots organization that's achieved a lot in the 20 years that it's been here. So there should be a lot of good conversation there. So while you are picking your breakout room, the final question is one that really has to do with how you deal with change. Many people are accustomed to a particular way of doing things. I'm sure you've all heard comments like, I've done this, we've done it this way all the time, we don't need to change. Well, how do you get people you meet in your field, in your area, who may seem resistant to change, to engage them in the process and overcome that resistance? So I'll open it up to any panelist. Well, going once, going twice, or Sarah?
Yeah, I would say that the key to encouraging change is a good story, and a good story is supported by data. And that's what Justine talked about, right? Is that to get change to happen, you have to show the why. Why? Start with why, right? And I think that that's what we all have to do. And everyone who came here tonight to hear what we're talking about is better equipped with some of the whys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it.
I would just add to that too. I mean, one of the things that has helped us just internally, I think, is, and everybody on the panel has been a part of this, is building out the teams that have the different levels and components of expertise that are needed. Josh, we need an electrical engineer, by the way, to help us, as Sarah will attest to. at the city. So not that I'm trying to poach you, but maybe a little moonlighting. But like you got to have like the right technical skills, but bring whether it's budget or procurement or law, it's that education and, like Sarah was saying, the why, but it's getting people to buy into the activation, the vision, and how they fit in, and that team building is a really critical aspect of that.
Yeah, and I would just combine both of your answers and say, I think Pittsburgh is especially rich with people who are not only knowledgeable but will love to help. So if you don't know, or if you're overwhelmed, definitely you can reach out a hand, and there'll be somebody willing to help you along, either helping you make the story or helping you with the actual implementation.
And I'm also just noticing in the chat too, there was a question from Patrick Pagano about working with universities and their garages and the demand side. I mean, the answer to that I would say is yes. I'd also maybe punt to Sarah on that in terms of charging in garages and street side. On the street side, it's something that we're trying to figure out how to do that. We've done it in a lot of public garages with support with Duquesne Light. And that's part of like our planet charging strategy first. Obviously, we'll definitely be working with kind of our other garage operators like the universities and others to kind of look where coverage is needed and how we can help support that.
Anybody else have any responses they'd like to share? Okay, well, I want to give a special thanks to all of our panelists for taking the time to be with us today and answering questions. We will now be ending our live stream and recording and transitioning to the breakout rooms for about a half an hour.